Behind every delicious sidewalk snack is a vendor navigating a maze of legal nonsense just to feed you. From European cobblestones to Tokyo's neon lights, the world of street food is a minefield of absolute absurdity. Today, we are unmasking 50 of the most ridiculous, baffling, and hilarious laws governing food trucks and vendors that actually exist. Prepare to see your favorite snacks through a lens of bureaucratic madness. You'll never look at a taco truck the same way again. 1. If you're running a hot dog stand in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, you must follow a strict utility prohibition law. It is illegal for a street vendor to use any public utility, such as a city-owned electrical outlet or water spigot, even if they offer to pay. This forces vendors to rely entirely on loud, expensive generators and heavy water tanks. The law keeps mobile businesses autonomous, but punishes those trying to be eco-friendly by plugging into the city's grid. One stray extension cord connected to a public pole can lead to immediate license revocation. 2. In San Diego, California, the city passed a law that strictly prohibits food trucks from using any neon or flashing signs to attract hungry people at night. The goal is to prevent visual clutter in beach neighborhoods, but it effectively makes it impossible for vendors to stand out in a crowded area. While a permanent bar can have a buzzing neon sign, a food truck must remain dimly lit and discreet. It's a law that treats mobile businesses like they are something that should be hidden rather than celebrated as part of the local nightlife. 3. How fast can you cook a taco? In Roseville, California, you'd better be quick, because a local law once prohibited food trucks from staying in one spot for more than 30 minutes. By the time the grill is hot and the onions are caramelized, the owner has to pack up and drive 3 blocks away to avoid a ticket. It's a literal fast food race against the clock. 4. In New York City, it is illegal for a street vendor to leave their cart or stand unattended for any amount of time, even for a bathroom break. The law requires the licensed operator to be physically present at the cart at all times while it's on the sidewalk. This has led to famous stories of vendors getting ticketed because they stepped 3 feet away to grab a drink or speak to a friend. It's a brutal regulation that treats a hot dog stand like a high-security guard post. Would you be okay with a vendor leaving their cart for 5 minutes? 5. London's street food scene is still haunted by hackney carriage laws from the 1800s. Back then, selling from a stationary vehicle was seen as an affront to the King's Highway. Today, getting a legal pitch in a prime location requires a permit system so archaic you basically need a seal from a medieval duke. This forces many vendors into a gray zone where they can only sell if they keep moving. It's a bizarre dance between Victorian tradition and modern hunger, featuring coffee carts that look like they're constantly escaping a crime scene. 6. In the city of Ahmedabad, India, the local government once implemented a controversial ban that prohibited non-vegetarian street food stalls from operating on main roads and near schools or religious places. The law required these vendors to move their carts into small, hidden side streets so the sight and smell of meat wouldn't offend the public. This forced thousands of kebab and egg sandwich vendors into the shadows, turning a massive part of the city's culinary culture into a hide-and-seek game with the police. Does the government have the right to hide food based on local preferences? 7. In Boston, Massachusetts, there is a regulation that requires every food truck to be equipped with a GPS tracking device that is accessible by the city government at all times. The law was pitched as a way for citizens to find their favorite trucks, but it's actually a high-tech enforcement tool. If a vendor moves even a few feet outside of their designated vending zone or stays parked 5 minutes past their permit time, the city knows instantly. It's a digital leash that ensures no vendor can sneak into a better spot without the all-seeing eye of the city noticing. 8. Chicago's infamous two-room rule was a masterpiece of bureaucratic nonsense. For years, the city required food preparation to happen in a separate compartment from the driver, while simultaneously banning the cooking of raw ingredients on the truck. You could only assemble pre-cooked items, leading to the empanada embargo, where chefs couldn't sear a steak but could sell you a lukewarm sandwich. It took a massive movement to finally allow actual fire to touch food. Who does this protect? the public, or the profits of brick-and-mortar restaurants. 9. San Antonio, Texas, once demanded that food trailers be mobile to an absurd degree to prove they weren't permanent structures dodging taxes. You had to be able to move your entire setup within minutes, meaning no decks, no seating, and no setting down routes. This created a class of culinary nomads who lived in fear of tape measures and hitch checks. It's the ultimate keep Texas weird scenario where your favorite taco spot might literally vanish if the owner spots a city van on the horizon. 10. In the state of Indiana, an old law on the books makes it illegal for any street vendor to sell colored popcorn. While standard buttered corn is perfectly fine, if a vendor tries to sell pink, blue, or green-dyed popcorn, popular at fairs and carnivals, they are technically in violation of a 20th century food safety rule. The law was originally intended to prevent vendors from using toxic dyes to mask old or moldy corn, but it stayed on the books long after food dyes became safe. It's a colorful ban that keeps the street food scene strictly natural. 11. If you operate a food stall in certain districts of London, you are legally forbidden from using any amplified sound or shouting to attract customers. This is part of the London Local Authorities Act, which aims to reduce noise pollution. While historical market criers were once the soul of the city, modern vendors can be fined hundreds of pounds just for yelling half-price donuts. It has turned the traditionally loud and chaotic London markets into surprisingly quiet zones where the food has to do all the talking. 12. If you want to sell hot dogs from a cart in Toronto, Canada, you must follow a very specific and restrictive list of allowed condiments. For decades, the city's health code was so strict that street vendors were legally only allowed to offer mustard, relish, and onions. Selling a hot dog with anything else, like chili or cheese sauce, could result in a massive fine or the loss of a license. The city eventually loosened the rules, but for a long time, the government effectively dictated exactly how every citizen had to flavor their lunch. 13. In some parts of Arizona, it is illegal for food trucks to operate within 200 feet of a permanent restaurant unless they have written permission from that restaurant's owner. This law was designed to protect traditional businesses from mobile competition, but it essentially gives restaurant owners the power to banish food trucks from entire city blocks. It turns the sidewalk into a territorial battlefield where a burger truck can be forced to move just because a brick-and-mortar cafe doesn't want them nearby. Do you think restaurants should have the right to kick food trucks off the street? 14. In the city of Brussels, Belgium, street vendors selling traditional waffles or fries must follow strict regulations regarding their trash management. The law requires every vendor to provide a waste bin that is not only visible but also specifically labeled according to city standards. If a customer drops a fork 2 meters away from the stall and the vendor doesn't pick it up, the vendor, not the customer, can be held legally responsible for the litter. It turns every waffle seller into a part-time janitor who has to patrol the sidewalk to keep their license safe. 15. In Chicago, for many years, the city's no-cooking law for food trucks was so extreme that it even applied to the assembly of sandwiches. Vendors were required to have every single ingredient pre-cut and prepared in a licensed commercial kitchen before even stepping onto the truck. This meant that if a health inspector caught a vendor slicing a single tomato on the truck, they could face immediate shutdown. It forced the city's vibrant food scene into a weird, pre-packaged era where nothing could be made truly fresh on the spot. 16. In the country of Singapore, being a street vendor requires a hawker license that is notoriously difficult to get and comes with a mountain of rules. One of the most unique laws is the points demerit system, where vendors get points taken away for things like not keeping their stall clean or failing to display their prices clearly. If a vendor loses too many points, they are banned from the industry for life. It's a high-stakes environment where one dirty towel can end a family business that has existed for generations. 17. Washington state has a law regarding damaged food that sounds like it was written by a germaphobe with unlimited power. It's illegal to sell adulterated food, a term so broad it includes anything held under unsanitary conditions. In practice, an inspector could shut you down if they decide a single fly looked at a hot dog bun with too much intent. While we all value hygiene, the language suggests street food should be prepared in a Level 4 biohazard lab. 18. In the city of Mobile, Alabama, it is strictly illegal for a street vendor to sell or even possess plastic confetti. This ordinance was created to keep the city's drainage systems from clogging during Mardi Gras celebrations, but it applies to food truck owners all year round. If you're a vendor trying to make your stand look festive for a party, the police can shut you down and fine you just for having a bag of colorful plastic bits. It's one of the few places in America where a taco stand can be treated like a crime scene over a handful of glitter. 19. In the city of Los Angeles, it was technically illegal to sell street food on the sidewalk for over a century, despite thousands of vendors doing it every day. The city only fully legalized the practice in 2018, but with an incredibly complex set of new rules. For instance, vendors are still banned from operating in high-traffic areas like the Hollywood Walk of Fame or near major stadiums. Even though it's legal now, the restrictions are so tight that most vendors are still technically breaking at least one law every time they open. 20. In Venice, Italy, a recent law specifically bans the opening of any new street food outlets that sell ethnic food, or items like kebabs and pizza by the slice in the city center. The government claims this is to protect the city's artistic and architectural heritage from being ruined by cheap food. While you can still buy traditional Venetian snacks, the law effectively bans diversity in the street food scene to maintain a certain look for tourists. It's a rare case where the government uses zoning laws to decide which cultures are allowed to be eaten on the street. 21. If you find yourself in the city of Westminster in London, you'll notice a very specific law regarding the placement of food stands. Vendors are legally forbidden from setting up their carts within a certain distance of any royal palace or government building. This isn't just for security. It's a centuries-old rule intended to prevent the smell of the common market from wafting into the windows of the elite. If a vendor's grill sends too much smoke toward a palace window, they can be forcibly moved or fined. It creates a literal scent barrier between the ruling class and the city's favorite street snacks. 22. In Portland, Oregon, known as the food truck capital of America, there is a very strict law regarding wastewater. Unlike a regular restaurant, food carts are legally prohibited from dumping gray water, the water used to wash hands or veggies, anywhere except into a specific permitted disposal site. In many cities, this is standard, but in Portland, inspectors are famous for checking the seals on a truck's holding tanks with extreme precision. A single leak or a bucket poured into a storm drain can result in an environmental fine that costs more than the truck itself. 23. The legendary Pojang matcha tents of South Korea are cultural icons that technically shouldn't exist. Because most lack official addresses or fixed plumbing, they are illegal under strict urban codes, yet the public loves them too much to let them go. The government usually plays a game of don't ask, don't tell, only cracking down when world leaders visit. It's the ultimate example of survival of the most delicious. 24. If you are a street vendor in Japan, you must obtain a road usage permit from the local police department, but there is a catch. These permits are often tied to specific historical associations, and in many districts, they are almost impossible for new people to get. This has created a legal environment where most yatai, or traditional food stalls, are run by families who have held the rights for decades. If you try to open a new ramen stall without being part of the sanctioned lineage or association, the police will shut you down in minutes for unauthorized occupation of the road. 25. In Philadelphia, the city has a very specific curfews for vendors law in certain residential neighborhoods. Even if the bars are full and people are hungry, street vendors are legally required to cease all operations and leave the area by midnight. This is meant to prevent rowdy crowds from gathering around food carts and keeping residents awake. While brick-and-mortar diners can stay open late, the mobile guy selling cheesesteaks has to vanish, making it one of the few places where the legality of your sandwich depends entirely on the position of the clock's hands. 26. Washington, D.C. has a highly unusual law regarding the vending zone size of a sidewalk cart. Legally, a vendor's setup cannot exceed a footprint of 18 square feet. This includes the cart, the vendor, and their trash cans. If a health inspector sees that your mustard bottle or a spare crate of buns is sitting 6 inches outside of that invisible 18-square-foot box, you are in violation of the law. It forces vendors to operate like they are in a high-stakes game of Tetris, where misplacing a single napkin can lead to a citation. 27. In the state of Massachusetts, there is an old law on the books that forbids any food vendor from selling damaged or impure food, which sounds normal until you read the specifics. It historically included a ban on selling any bread or rolls by the item, rather than by weight. This meant a street vendor could technically be fined if their rolls weren't of a uniform, legal weight regulated by the state's Sealer of Weights and Measures. While rarely enforced today, it's a remnant of a time when the government treated every loaf of bread like a piece of precious metal. 28. In the city of Singapore, street food isn't just about taste, it's about a government-mandated letter grade. Every hawker stall is legally required to display a large, color-coded sign, A, B, C, or D, based on their latest hygiene score. If a vendor drops to a D, they aren't just shamed. They are often legally forced to suspend operations and attend mandatory retraining classes. It's a brutal, public-facing legal system where a single-point deduction for a slightly warm refrigerator can lead to a total collapse of customer trust within seconds. 29. The city of Paris has a long-standing ban on the sale of takeaway alcohol from street stalls and shops in certain popular districts after 9:40 p.m. This law is strictly enforced to prevent public intoxication in tourist areas, meaning a street vendor selling crepes or sandwiches cannot sell you a beer to go with your meal late at night. Even if the vendor has a general liquor license, the specific to-go restriction makes late-night street dining a strictly non-alcoholic affair. It's a move by the city to keep the streets quiet, but it's a headache for vendors who lose out on major sales. 30. In certain municipalities in New Jersey, it is illegal for a food truck to stay in one spot for more than a few minutes unless they have an active line of customers. The law is known as the Keep Moving Ordinance, and it's designed to prevent trucks from becoming permanent fixtures on a public street. If the line clears and no one walks up for 10 minutes, the vendor is legally required to start the engine and drive to a new location. It's a relentless rule that forces vendors to spend half their day searching for parking instead of actually cooking. 31. In the city of Houston, Texas, you cannot legally operate a food truck unless you have a commissary agreement that includes a very specific requirement. Your truck must be physically touched by a licensed commissary official every single day. The law dictates that the vehicle must return to a central base every 24 hours to be cleaned and inspected. If a vendor decides to park their truck in a safe, private lot overnight to save fuel, they are technically in violation. The city wants proof that the truck was scrubbed daily, making off-the-grid street food a legal impossibility in the Space City. 32. If you are selling food in the city of Buenos Aires, Argentina, you have to be very careful about your menu if you want to be a mobile vendor. The local government has a law that limits street carts to specific traditional items like choripan or roasted nuts, while banning the sale of more complex dishes. This is meant to protect the traditional image of the city's streets. If a vendor tries to get creative and sell sushi or gourmet tacos from a standard street cart, they can be shut down for culinary non-compliance. It's a legal system that values tradition over innovation. 33. In Seattle, Washington, there is a strict rule regarding the line of sight for food truck customers. Legally, a food truck cannot be positioned in a way that its customers form a queue that blocks the entrance to any nearby building or covers more than half of the sidewalk's width. If your tacos are so popular that the line starts to wrap around a local shop's door, the police can force you to close up shop immediately. It puts vendors in a weird position where having too many customers at once is actually a legal liability that could end their workday. 34. In certain districts of Mumbai, India, there is a legal requirement for street vendors to have a no smoking sign that is specifically sized and color-coded, even if their stall is just a small wooden box on the ground. If the sign is 1 inch too small or the red circle isn't the correct shade, the vendor can be fined for failing to promote public health. It's an oddly bureaucratic rule for a person who might not even have a permanent roof, proving that red tape can find you even on the busiest sidewalk in the world. 35. If you find yourself in Baltimore, Maryland, you'll encounter the 300-foot rule, which is one of the toughest in the country. Street vendors are legally forbidden from selling any food within 300 feet of a retail establishment that sells similar items. This means if a food truck wants to sell coffee, they have to stay 300 feet away from any cafe, gas station, or even a grocery store that sells beans. In a dense city, this law effectively bans food trucks from almost every profitable corner, leaving them to hunt for legal gaps in industrial zones or empty lots. 36. In the city of Helsinki, Finland, street food vendors are governed by a strict seasonal permit system that dictates exactly what can be sold during different months. Historically, the city restricted the sale of certain hot foods during the peak summer months to favor lighter, appropriate snacks like berries or ice cream. While the rules have modernized, the city still maintains tight control over the visual aesthetic of the stalls. If your cart looks too industrial or doesn't match the city's approved color palette, you won't get a permit to operate in the historic center. 37. If you're in New Jersey and hear an ice cream truck, pay attention. The law is listening. In many towns, it's illegal for these trucks to play their music while stationary. The jingle is legally a beckoning tool, but the moment the truck stops to serve a line of kids, the driver must kill the music or face a noise violation. Is a synthesized glockenspiel really the one thing standing between us and total societal collapse? 38. If you operate a street stall in Mexico City, you are part of a system governed by traditional rights that often override modern permits. There is a legal concept where a vendor can claim a specific spot on the sidewalk if their family has occupied it for a certain number of years. However, this also means they are legally responsible for the security of that sidewalk area. If a crime happens right in front of their stand and they didn't report it or take measures, the city can revoke their historical right to that spot. Would you want to be legally responsible for the entire street corner? 39. Toronto, Canada, spent decades enforcing a street meat monopoly that would make a mob boss blush. Until recently, health bylaws were so hyper-strict that vendors were legally banned from selling almost anything except pre-cooked hot dogs. Want a taco? Too bad. Fancy a crepe? Not on this corner. The hot dog wars were a real struggle for survival, with vendors fighting over patches of concrete like gold mines. Imagine a world where the government dictates your palate so strictly that a chicken skewer feels like a radical act of rebellion. 40. In the city of Rome, Italy, there is a very specific law targeting sandwich men, vendors who walk around with food or advertisements strapped to their bodies. It is illegal to sell food or drinks while in motion as a pedestrian vendor in the historic Tridente area. The city wants to prevent the narrow streets from becoming clogged with people carrying trays of snacks. If you want to sell a bottle of water or a piece of fruit, you must be stationary and behind a government-approved counter. Any attempt to walk and sell will result in the immediate confiscation of your goods. 41. In the historic city of Bruges, Belgium, there is a visual authenticity rule that dictates exactly how street food can be displayed in windows or stalls. Vendors are legally forbidden from using bright, artificial-looking plastic food models, a common practice in many other countries, because the city believes they look tacky and ruin the medieval vibe. If you want to show customers what your waffles look like, you have to use the real thing or a very expensive, high-end replica that passes a government beauty test. 42. If you head to the streets of Istanbul, Turkey, you'll find that street vendors selling the famous simit bread rings are regulated by a strict uniformity law. The city government dictates the exact shade of red that the street carts must be painted, and even the specific traditional clothing the vendors are encouraged to wear in certain tourist zones. If a vendor decides to paint their cart blue or wear a modern branded tracksuit, they can be pushed out of the prime historical spots. It's a legal effort to turn street food into a living museum, where the vendor's outfit is just as regulated as the ingredients in the bread. 43. In Vancouver, Canada, the city has a nutritional merit law for its street food program. When a vendor applies for a permit, their menu is graded by a panel that awards points for healthy ingredients and culturally diverse options. If your menu is deemed too low value, meaning it's just standard fries or burgers, you are legally pushed to the bottom of the list for the best street corners. The government essentially uses the law to engineer what the public eats, making it nearly impossible to get a prime downtown spot if you aren't selling something like vegan fusion bowls. 44. In the state of New Jersey, the city of Newark has a law that forbids food trucks from operating within 500 feet of any public school while classes are in session. This sweets ban was designed to prevent children from skipping healthy cafeteria meals in favor of street tacos or ice cream. While it sounds protective, the 500-foot radius is so large in a crowded city that it effectively creates food deserts for blocks at a time. A vendor can find themselves in legal trouble simply because a school is tucked away behind a nearby building they didn't even notice. 45. If you are running a food stall in the city of Munich, Germany during any major festival, you must comply with the reusable dishwork ordinance. The law states that street vendors are forbidden from using disposable plastic plates or cutlery. Instead, they must use ceramic or heavy-duty reusable plastic and charge a fand, or deposit, which is returned to the customer when they bring the dish back. If a vendor is caught handing out a single-use fork, they face massive environmental fines. It turns every street food transaction into a rental agreement, where the vendor is legally responsible for the return of the plate. 46. In Austin, Texas, there is a light pollution ordinance that specifically targets the bright LED menus often found on modern food trailers. The law requires that any outdoor lighting used by a vendor must be shielded so that the light only shines downward and doesn't spill into the night sky or nearby residential windows. If a vendor's menu board is too bright and bothers a neighbor 3 blocks away, the city can force them to dim the lights or shut down for the night. It's a law that prioritizes the dark sky over the vendor's ability to show off their prices. 47. In the state of Oregon, food truck owners have to navigate the single-use glove paradox. In many jurisdictions, the law requires vendors to wear gloves when handling food. But a specific environmental health ordinance also mandates that these gloves be changed every time the vendor touches a non-food surface, including their own cash register or a customer's credit card. For a solo vendor, this means they could legally be required to go through hundreds of pairs of gloves in a single shift. If an inspector sees you take a $5 bill and then touch a taco without a fresh glove change, the fine can wipe out your entire day's profit. 48. The city of Los Angeles has a vendor equipment law that mandates every hot dog cart must have a multi-compartment sink with a specific pressurized hot water system, even if they are only selling prepackaged snacks. This law effectively made thousands of traditional simple carts illegal overnight. To be legal, a vendor must now operate a cart that can cost as much as a small car. This has created a two-tier society on the sidewalks: the luxury carts that meet the extreme technical specs, and the traditional carts that are constantly running from the police. Would you pay $20 for a hot dog just to cover the cost of the vendor's legal sink? 49. In Tokyo, Japan, street vendors known as yatai are legally required to have a garbage manager on site if they serve more than a certain number of customers. While many vendors are one-person operations, the law insists that the area around the stall must be kept in pristine condition at all times. If a health inspector finds a single discarded chopstick wrapper on the ground within 5 meters of the stall, the vendor is held responsible regardless of who dropped it. It's a system of collective responsibility that forces vendors to spend as much time sweeping the street as they do cooking. We've navigated 49 rules proving street food is governed by eccentric minds. And we have one final entry. But first, the final verdict. The award for the most baffling rule goes to Baltimore's 300-foot rule. In a city with a deli on every corner, staying 300 feet from similar items is a mathematical impossibility designed for failure. Do you agree? Or did the GPS digital leash take the crown? Let us know which one broke your brain the most. Now for our final number. 50. In the city of Tokyo, Japan, street vendors selling yaki-imo, roasted sweet potatoes, from traditional trucks have a very specific song license requirement. Many of these vendors use a classic melodic recording to announce their arrival. But if the volume or frequency of the song exceeds a certain decibel level in residential zones, they can be shut down for acoustic littering. The law is so precise that it measures the gap between each playback of the song. It turns the charming tradition of a singing food truck into a high-stakes game of volume control. The world of street food is clearly a battlefield where common sense often goes to die at the hands of red tape. These laws remind us that the simple joy of a sidewalk snack is only possible because of vendors who are brave enough to face absolute bureaucratic insanity every single day. If you were starting your own food truck tomorrow, which of these strange legal hurdles would scare you away from the business entirely? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and make sure to like and subscribe for more.